Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's debut chat. Pat. Sorry, not chat. I'm merging panel and chat in my mind. I couldn't decide what I wanted to say, but welcome to today's YA debut panel, where we will chat about these YA debuts. If you have any questions, we will try to answer a few questions at the end. So get them ready, and you can also share them in the live chat area, and I will make sure to go back to them. If you don't know who I am, my name is Lily, and I'm the moderator for the panel. I'm also the face behind Utopia State of Mind. So now we're going to have our authors introduce themselves and also obviously tell us about their book. And then we'll jump into some questions that I sent after reading them. So Caroline, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm Caroline Bonin. I wrote Barista's Guide to Love and Larceny. It came out in January. It's a young adult cozy fantasy romance about Danny. She is a first-year student at her dream magic university, and she works full-time nights as a barista to help pay for the part of her tuition that her scholarship doesn't cover. But that's not quite cutting it. So she ends up joining a project with one of her professors to investigate a shady corporation that creates like lucid dreaming projects in town, and that ends up escalating into a heist. So lots of drama with that. And in the meantime, she's also crushing on this cute regular at work. So yeah, that's my book.
I'm Tessia, and I should have brought a copy of my book. It's called Deathly Fates. It's a young adult fantasy inspired by Chinese folklore. It's about a corpse-driving priestess who basically her job is to shepherd home the dead, and she accidentally brings a dead prince back to life and agrees to help him find and purify evil spirits so that they can gather enough chi for him to stay alive.
So hi, I'm Gwyneth. Imagine my book right here. So it's called You're Dead to Me, Reed Walker. It comes out in a week and a half on May 12th. And the story, and the story follows two academic rivals who end up dying at their graduation party and are forced to haunt the same house together. And so they kind of have to deal with the sort of inconvenient feelings that, oh my God, my husband brought my book. Good husband. Thank you, John. So yeah, they end up having to kind of deal with these sort of growing inconvenient feelings as their ghostly roommates together, and then team up to solve the mystery of what happened to them, the murder that happened in that house. So they sort of have to team up and of course like fall for each other along the way.
So I want to first start off with probably the question that you've gotten and will get like 5 million times, but it's basically about the theme of being a debut, right? So I want to know kind of what inspired your debut novel, period. And also what I'm curious about as well is kind of what has changed the most since like that very first seed of an idea to kind of now, and how it, will arrive and has arrived into this world. Caroline, do you want to start?
Yeah. So I actually wrote what is now the second chapter of this book first. It's the Meet Cute. And it was back when I was working as a barista, because I worked as a barista for many years. You'll be able to tell if you read the book. But so they just kind of popped in my head, these two characters, but I didn't know what to do with them. So I wrote that Meet Cute, and then I put it away. And then when COVID happened, I was like, I really need something like cute and fun to work on. So I brought that chapter back out, and I was like, what am I going to do with that? And so I really wanted to see more books set in college. And so I focused on this because I feel like there's a lot of books about college that aren't necessarily for college students. And that's something that I wanted when I was in college. And I also wanted something that was going to make me feel nice during COVID. But the way it changed the most was that I definitely didn't expect it to have a heist. That was not like something I had planned for going in, and kind of evolved as I wrote it. And the romance part of it also developed more. Like I'd never really seen myself as a romance writer until I started working on this. And then my editor was like, well, let's punch up the romance. Let's like make it completely a full-blown romance. And so that was really fun for me to do too.
I can go next. Mine was similar in terms of the changes, but just to start, I also wrote my book during the pandemic, and it was heavily inspired by that, there's literally mention of an epidemic in the book. But I was mostly inspired by just like Chinese folklore in general, and then my mother's stories growing up, and also my relationship with my dad. This book is very much about a daughter and her father. And so I was inspired by that. And then something that changed, kind of like Caroline mentioned, is my editor wanted more romance. And so that's the thing that has changed since the first draft is I've added much more romance. It's still very much a slow burn. I wouldn't quite classify it as romantasy, but it has more of that than it did before.
So mine, I actually had a dream where I was in a haunted house, and then I woke up kind of thinking about that story, and I was reminded of this quote that Sartre has in the play No Exit, which is that hell is other people. And I thought, oh my God, how awful would it be to be trapped in a haunted house with someone you just could not stand? And so that kind of sparked the story. And I felt like I had, if I wanted to sort of subvert your typical ghost story, I feel like we often see, like human beings entering a house with ghosts, or maybe we see stories where like one person's a ghost and they're sort of communing with the living. But I really like the idea of both my characters being ghosts. So that was sort of the seed of the issue, and kind of teasing out this idea of like, what would it be like to be trapped with somebody who was both, really cute and disarmingly charming, but also like super annoying. And so that kind of started off Tessa and Reed's relationship. But the big way that it changed is that when Macmillan bought the book, my editors hopped on a call with me and they're like, hey, how would you feel? Because I sold it as a single POV story from Tessa's point of view. And they said, how would you feel about writing this as dual POV and bringing Reed's voice into the mix? And I actually thought that was a really inspired idea. I'm really glad that we did it. But it did mean like kind of breaking the book back down and thinking about like where he, which chapters really belong to him in this story. And then, when you're sort of telling those two dual arcs, what does he need to kind of more fully flesh out his character? And so that was definitely a challenge. I think often you think you know your characters, you think you know them because you write their dialogue in someone else's scene, but when you have to step into their head, it's like a whole different level, and really softened me to him too, to kind of learn him from the inside out in that way.
So all of the books have like a fantastical angle to them. And so I'm really interested to know, when you were starting out writing this book or drafting it and whatever, how has your approach to world building, or like your preconceptions basically about world building as a whole, changed throughout the drafting and like the editing and revising part of this novel? And also, what were the hardest and easiest process or pieces basically of world building? Tessia, do you want to start?
Sure. My magic system is very much soft magic. It's important to the plot, but it's not super intricate in terms of like, how does it work and who can use it and whatever. It definitely exists to act as a foil to the main character and her journey. It's very much about, it's not quite necromancy. It's reanimating the dead. And so there's these themes of like controlling death in a sense. As far as world building goes, there were like moments in the revision process where like my editor or other readers would be like, I could use a little bit more clarification here. But also for the most part, I was very much like, look, this is heavily inspired by real Chinese magic, which doesn't always have explanations. It just is. And so in those cases, I might push back a little bit and be like, well, just let it be, just let it be. But if it was something super, like really confusing for Western readers, then fine, I would like kind of clarify it a little bit. But for the most part, my world building was fairly simple. I've had a couple of readers say like my writing is really simple, like not in an insulting way, but like just like, it's very
Clean.
Yeah, sure. And like the world building, like I really only bring up the setting when I need to help immerse the readers, but I don't dwell too much on it.
Yeah, my magic is all pretty soft too. That's generally how I like to write. And I would say like the challenge for me was sometimes giving it more specificity. Thinking primarily of my main character, Danny, she has an ability it's kind of a passive ability, but it's like she inspires people to overshare around her. When they're talking to her, they kind of blurt out things they wouldn't normally. And me and my editor wanted it to be a little bit more concrete. And so I ended up giving her kind of a magical synesthesia where she sees like colors in her mind relating to what those people are feeling when they say the thing they didn't mean to say. So that was a fun challenge. But in terms of what I learned about world building, I think for me, like I learned my process is I still do a lot of world building up front, but I think I also like to like let it come out as I write, because a lot of my times my character and setting will inform the world building and the magic. And you can kind of like, for me, I can get ideas that way more easily than just like sitting down and be like, okay, I'm going to write out the world. I'm going to figure out exactly what it is before I ever start drafting. Whereas it's more organic for me if I can kind of weave it in as I go.
Yeah, I think mine's sort of interesting because it is technically our world it's set in. They're just accessing our world in this different way. And so, and just to be clear, like the book I had written previously was a YA, I don't know, like light academia. It wasn't too dark of an academia. So it was a more contemporary world. And so this was sort of my first foray into world building. And really fun. So I think for me, it was sort of thinking about like, what are the tropes that we expect in a ghost story? Like ghosts are translucent, or they can, I don't know, like go through walls, or they can hover, or, just what are the things that ghosts sort of typically can do? And then thinking about places where I either use those to my advantage or completely subvert those tropes. So there are times where, and also I would say writing a romance, I think I decided really early on, like I needed to think of this as sort of an alternate plane where they are very real to each other in this space, because it's hard to write a romance if your characters can't touch, if they're like just vapor. So I think thinking about the places where I could kind of lean into typical ghost stories and thinking about some skills and techniques and things that I give them that you might not expect was sort of the fun challenge of writing them.
I think that one of my favorite elements of any book is a good side character. I think it's really fun to get attached to them, and also for me to like wonder, right, about the backstories and wonder about all this history and work that have gone into every side character. So I'd love to know from you all what side characters gave you the most trouble, and sort of if any of them were kind of a last minute, like, oh, I would like to, I'm thinking about this, and I want to put this character in. And in terms of side characters as well, like who has stayed the same throughout the whole thing, like this is exactly who they are as a character. Gwyneth, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because it's really like a forced proximity kind of story. And so, but there is a cast of side characters in it, and we definitely meet them over a few different scenes. I don't know that anyone gave me a tremendous amount of trouble, but I will say one of the characters that's kind of coming to mind. So Tessa, my main character, begins the book with a boyfriend, Brandon, who she calls as wild as a potted plant. So he likes tea. He's a sweet guy, but he's, a little dull. And so he was a fun character to write. And I guess the trick with him is that I didn't want to villainize him. Like, he's a good guy. He's just not the right guy for her. And I think that's something that I wanted to explore, especially for like younger readers, that like sometimes we can end up in a relationship where it's like passable, it's fine, or sometimes we end up in a job where it's like fine, and because it's fine enough, you kind of stay. And so, how do you get your character to realize that, like, yeah, but you can do better. There's somebody who's like more challenging for you or better for you. So I think the tricky part with Brandon was just making it so that he's not a villain. He's not a bad guy. He's just not the right guy for her.
I have a lot of side characters. I wouldn't say any of them like gave me trouble. I mean, there has to be a lot of side characters in a heist, right? Because you have to have all kind of the players. And they were all really fun to write because I got to like really pick very different types of personalities to come together, and they all like had their place. The one who evolved the most was Oliver, who is my main character's friend, who is so the corporation they're investigating is creating this magical lucid dreaming project, and they're testing it on students at the university, and Oliver is one of those students, and they have like a very negative side effect. And so Danny is like wanting to help them. And I ended up like bulking up Oliver's story to almost be a main character, like kind of like in between side and main character. And I get a lot of comments about how they love Oliver. Everybody loves Oliver. So me too. They're my cinnamon roll. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think any of them like really gave me trouble. They're just like kind of grew and evolved as I kept writing.
Yeah. I have to agree with the other two. I didn't have any side characters where I'm like, oh, I really hated writing them, or it was a huge struggle. I would say one side character that kind of evolved more beyond like what I initially planned for her was my main character's sister. Kind of just wanted her to have a sibling because I grew up with siblings. But her frustrations and her sense of duty and how she clashes with the main character ended up coming naturally as I was drafting. It wasn't planned, but it just came up, and I was like, I don't know that it's necessarily exactly the same as my relationship with my sister, but it was very much like sisters do not get along sometimes. They pretend to, and they try to, but sometimes they really irritate each other. And so that was really fun for me to play with, especially near the end when my main character is making some questionable decisions. Her sister is like the voice of reason. And it was really fun to like, it was weird, but it was really fun to write about them being angry at each other.
I want to ask another question kind of about your origin stories, or like everyone's origin stories, about sort of when you decided that you wanted to become a writer. And also, I find it really interesting to find out how many books someone has written before like their debut, because I think that some people have a conception that like the debut is the first one you've ever written, and like this is the that book. So I would love to know, when you first wanted to become a writer, how many books did you write before this one? And similarly to kind of this whole theme, what do you think are some, or like a misconception you had about being a writer as a whole? Caroline, you want to start?
Yeah, I've wanted to be an author like since I was teeny tiny, and I've been writing ever since then. I wrote my first book in 5th grade. I had like a whole series about unicorns. Huge unicorn fan. Someday I'll write my actual unicorn book.
Caroline, just a unicorn on your website. Is that why?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love unicorns, obsessed. But yeah, so it's always just been like the main thing in my life that I wanted to do. But so I've written a bajillion books. I mean, most of them terrible. Like I definitely like cut my teeth on like copying like the Hunger Games, just, writing copies of whatever book I loved at the moment, which is kind of how I think you learn. But in terms of like books that I like tried to sell, this is the 3rd. So, but it's only the 2nd one that I've been out like officially on submission with. But yeah, so this is my like 3rd polished manuscript essentially. Oh, misconception about writing. I just remembered there was another part of the question. For me, it was just that it was just going to happen and it would be magical and I wouldn't have to wait. And as soon as I graduated college, I would just magically become published. That did not happen. It's 10 years later and it's finally happening now. But so yeah, it's just a matter of persistence and discipline.
I guess I can go. I had kind of I've come at it a little differently. So I was have been working for years in the theater as a theater director and also as an educator. I teach teens acting with Lincoln Center Theater. So I've worked with story for a really long time, and I really understand story, but in this like slightly different medium. And through many years, like let's say probably like 20 years, I have been keeping notebooks of like YA story ideas. And I would go into bookstores and just like go right to like the kidlit section. I would look at, I mean, I love all kidlit. So I look at picture books, I would look at YA, I would just sort of dream and think about these things. I read in those genres exclusively, but it wasn't until 2016 where I got my master's in interdisciplinary art. And I had been studying immersive and interactive theater, and I had to write about it for my master's. And I thought, well, it seems weird to write about it in this didactic way. I should write about it in like an immersive, interactive way. So I wrote this entire for my thesis, like a choose your own adventure. I wrote it entirely as fiction and in second person, and it was all hyperlinked. You could take like 280 routes through my thesis, and it was amazing. This thing was amazing. This document, I think 5 people in the world have ever written it. I read it, but man, I experienced this incredible state of flow working on it, like just incredible. And so I got my degree, and then I turned around and didn't use that degree. I just was like, you know what I need to do? I need to write. And I sat down immediately. So this was like 2017, and just started working on my first novel. And honestly, yeah, it's like such a state of flow. I write on my roof at night, and I just like get in the zone and loved it. I just fell in love with it. So this was a little bit of a like later pivot, I guess, for me. But in a weird way, almost like an inevitable pivot, because I've been thinking about it and mulling on it and working with story for so long. But like you, Caroline, I think I will be 9 years out from starting this process to publication. And
was that book that you wrote in 2017, was it You're Dead to Me?
Oh yeah, was that part of the question? Yeah, no. Yeah, so 2017, I just took notes. 2017 was like a notes year. And 2018, I actually started writing. So, and I wrote one other book. So I wrote a book called Prescriptions for Life, which is this sort of YA light academia. I love that book. And both my books, they both took like 2 years to write. And then both of them got into mentorship programs that did like another year of like writing and revision with them. So rather than like those, I admire writers who like churn it out. I have been like the opposite story. It's taken me a lot of time between these 2 books, but yeah, I'm 2 books in. The first book, had some agent interest, but it died in the trenches. And so this is really my first book that got picked up with an agent and then went out on sub and got bought.
So for me, I'm like Caroline. I also have been wanting to write since I was a kid. When I was, I think around 11, I read Kate DiCamillo's Because of Winn-Dixie and loved it so much that I like kind of wrote my own fanfic of it. So that was like my first thing where I was like, oh, look, I can write something. And then between like middle school and college, I wrote a ton of stuff. Like portal fantasies, vampire fantasies, whatever was popular when I was at that age. So I probably wrote like 7 to 10 projects. Again, they're not good, but they were a good practice. And then I did a master's in creative writing. And for that program, I had to write a thesis. And my thesis was a young adult contemporary novel. It was a heavy novel. It was basically a Me Too novel about a girl who is abused by her father. And I was really proud of that piece. And I did submit that one or query that one. But at the time, a lot of agents were like, there are so many Me Too books out there. So we don't really want to pick up another one. And I was like, okay. So I shelved that one and then worked on a different fantasy. It didn't get an agent, but I did get mentored by an author who was looking for someone to help. And that was really great. And then around the pandemic, 2020, that's when I started writing Deathly Fates. And my friend was like, you should submit it to Pitch Wars. And I was like, I don't know if I'll get picked, but I did submit it and I got chosen, which was very exciting. And that's how I ended up signing with my agent during the showcase at the end. And it was funny because she was actually one of the agents I queried with my thesis project, and she had turned me down then. But it really just depended on the timing and the right project. And for her, it was this one. And so yeah, this book was on sub for like 2 years. But we both still felt really confident in it. And then eventually I got editor. So it's been a long journey, but I'm very happy with where I'm at now.
My book was also on sub for 2 years, so join that club.
Yeah.
I feel like now we need to have like a light academia portal fantasy with vampires and unicorns. Like I feel like that would be so good.
You go through the portal and you're like, run away! Back!
You just like portal into each of these. Yeah. And like the ultimate twist is that at the end there's like a vampiric unicorn.
I was just gonna say.
That would be pretty scary.
Yeah. I want to pivot a little bit to asking questions that are like specific to books. And also if like anyone watching also has questions, now is a good time to start dropping them in the chat and then I will come back to them. I first want to ask about You're Dead to Me, Reed Walker, specifically about the theme of being confronted with death, because I think that's one of the first like really, really emotional parts of the book. And just talking about kind of what it feels like to have your life like prematurely, before you have these unrealized dreams and unrealized potentials and stuff like that. So could you just talk about how you explored that idea within it and sort of how you decided to go further into that theme in the book?
Yeah. I mean, so I think the book holds a lot. It's funny, it's romantic, and then it also has this like very kind of emotional core, which is that these characters do die. And it's interesting. I had a number of agents offer on the book, and one of them really loved it, but wanted them to like wake back up at the end and be okay. And like, it was all a dream. And I just feel like, no, because death just doesn't work that way. And as somebody who has experienced grief myself, I felt like it was really important to kind of look at that question of how the living are grieving Tessa and Reed, but also just how they're grieving their lives that they could have lived and the people that they have to leave behind. So that is all there. And, if you read it, you should like have some tissue by your side for some of those moments. But ultimately for me, right, I can't talk about how someone else perceives the book, but for me, I don't think of it as a sad story. Right? I really think of this as offering Tessa and Reed, like they find each other in the afterlife. They fall in love in the afterlife. They're excited for sort of what's next. And so I think of it less as a story of an ending and more as a story of another kind of new beginning. And the other thing I will just say on this topic is that really for me, like at its core, what I've held onto the whole time I've written this book was that I feel like the book to me is about the fact that we are all of us more than our plans. And so I think especially when you're young, I mean, we're all guilty of it, but I think especially when I was younger, I was really guilty of this idea of like kind of catastrophic thinking, like I have to achieve X, Y, or Z by this age, or, and you see a lot even in like the book community, like if I'm not published by 30, I've failed, right? And so we put all this sort of unnecessary pressure on ourselves, but life is full of tons of curveballs. Like I have had my fair share of curveballs and they've not all been like easy, right? And Tessa and Reed get the ultimate curveball. They die, right? It's like the ultimate curveball. But they learn to kind of give themselves grace. And I hope that my readers can also give themselves grace about the fact that life doesn't always go to plan. It doesn't always chart the course we expect, but there's beautiful, exciting things to be found in the unexpected. And so that is really the message that I hope people take away from this book.
Gwen, oh my God, you're gonna like make me cry. I can't wait to read your book. Oh my God.
That. Sorry.
That was beautiful.
Have your tissue ready.
Yeah, I also feel like, especially with the cover too, right before I like dove in, right? I was like, oh, look at the cover, like it's so. And then I feel like after a couple of chapters, like, wow, this.
Yeah,
there's such an emotional core to it. I think that's what you're saying.
Huge emotional core to it. Yeah, there's a huge emotional core to it. So it's fun. It's fun and funny, and they bicker and they have their dynamic. But yeah, I think readers should expect that. Like, yeah, it's dealing with I mean, hopefully with a light touch sometimes, but it's dealing with some big stuff.
Mhm. Caroline, you had mentioned already kind of how the heist and like all of that kind of was something that developed. So the lucid dreaming, and I couldn't, as I was writing this question, I was like, is it lucid? Like I couldn't really kind of pin it down, but I think that is kind of how I was envisioning it. But that project is something that I really enjoyed, and how it talks about academia, academia and intersection with kind of privilege and everything like that. So I wanted to know how you were drawn to like that specific idea, and the side characters, as you mentioned in the heist, all of their motivations. What do you think that it explores in regards to academic, I guess, opportunity as a whole, that like intersection?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, the lucid dreaming came kind of like from an earlier iteration of the book where I hadn't decided on the heist yet, and I was like kind of exploring them taking like an iromancy class, like a dream telling the future class, and them getting stuck in their dreams. But then I realized like I don't really like reading dream sequences myself. And also I wanted to bring in that kind of external pressure of like the corporation, and like for me, I really wanted a lot about what do you get to college, because like that, this is like your big goal, right? This is Danny's like big goal. Like she's trying to get to college, but then she doesn't like really know what she's going to do after that. And I'm really having a hard time explaining this. But she learns so much about herself through the process of investigating this corporation, and how she like her expectations differ from what reality is. And that's true for all the side characters' motivations too. Like Oliver, for instance, they join the trials, the lucid dreaming trials, because they eventually want to work for this company, because it's like always been their dream. And then they are kind of like cast aside by the company when they have the bad side effects, and they're like, you signed a waiver, like you don't get to like come to us with your issues. And that like kind of crushes them. And so for all of the side characters, I wanted them to have some kind of connection with the deeper story of the corporation, and have it like come back to like their motivation or like their dream that they'd always held. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but I guess like it really just I didn't want it to be like, oh, college is just like this kind of fun fantasy land. Like I wanted it to feel real and deal with like real world issues that so many young people like are facing now, especially with like the cost of higher education, because it's all about like her needing the money to pay for college.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. Like, I think that obviously, as you said, like it turns into a heist, and obviously with the motivations for them, they're all, and especially for the main character, like so rooted into a position of like, this is what you need to do, because how else are you gonna make this work, right?
Yeah.
Like financially as well. And like, thought that was really interesting setting, and like a really interesting way to explore that in relation to like the other things that are going on in the book as well.
Yeah, but I also wanted to make sure like not everybody's motivation was just money, because like
Yeah.
I thought that would be kind of boring. So there's like a character who's like hoping to get a job out of doing this heist, and a character is hoping to like save their family. And so like I just like wanted it to like be very multifaceted from that. And then there's also a character who's like, this sounds fun. Like, let's do it. And yeah, so that was a lot of fun for me to kind of like bring in those different motivations and weave them all together.
I would love to talk a little bit about kind of like the framework of Deathly Fates, and how you set up like all of these different scenarios that happen. So I'd love to know how you approach sort of the structure of the story when you were kind of mapping it out, and coming up. I always find it interesting when certain things like happen within a story, to kind of wonder from a writer's perspective, is this happening because you need to like explore this topic, or we need to move the character forward? So I'd like to know from kind of each of these instances, each of these cases, like how you balance something that is functional to the story, but also something that's adventure and entertainment, as well, kind of at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was younger, I really loved reading the Percy Jackson series. And something I really loved about them was this adventure journey, like hero's journey kind of. I mean, this applies to a lot of Greek mythology just in general, of like you go from one point to the next, and you're like, kind of like a video game too, right? Where you have multiple bosses to defeat. And so pretty early on, I knew that was the structure I wanted to go with. Just because, I mean, initially because it was fun. I thought it would keep the momentum going. Like, it's fun to read, and so I thought it would be fun to write. But as I started writing it and like planning, well, what are these evil spirits, or who are these evil spirits that my main character has to defeat / encounter and understand, then it became more of how can these spirits teach my main character what she needs to learn? Because in the beginning, she starts off with this very obvious flaw of like, I know best. I'm the only one who can take care of everything, and like I am in control, which is unrealistic. You know, you can't always control everything, and a lot of times people around you don't want you to control everything. And for her, it's very much like, this is a job. Like, I have to just get this done with so I can take care of my family, or in this case, my father. But as she's encountering these spirits and also like interacting with the prince, who is a very different kind of personality from hers, she's learning one after the other, like, well, first of all, what really is death, right? And like, how does it affect people beyond it being a job? And what kind of human griefs do spirits carry with them even after they have passed away? And to me, I think like it usually takes a while for me to learn something. Like, for example, if I'm in therapy and my therapist is like, you really should practice this thing. And I'm like, yes, I should practice that thing. But I still make the same mistakes over and over again. That's why it made sense to me that my main character, she's not going to encounter just one spirit and be like, okay, I should change my ways. But like, she needed to encounter multiple, and also some other complicated experiences with the living before she can finally learn, like, this is a problem. Like, I shouldn't be like this. And so I think that the structure of like a reviewer like named it as like monster of the week, that structure really helped my main character's arc, and ultimately was really fun to write.
As you mentioned, like the prince, like they have almost very, very different personalities. Did you, when you mapped, you were talking about the structure of like the, you know, the monsters and like the spirits and stuff, but did you also, when you were thinking about that, also map or draft like how their relationship and their specifically their misconceptions and like the things that they think about each other, you know, how that crumbles and like rebuilds and stuff like that? Do you also approach it similarly in terms of kind of like what feelings or like what experiences have to happen between them to get them to kind of reevaluate?
Yeah. Well, first of all, with their dynamic, it was very much like they both have flaws and their flaws reflect each other's. And so how can we get the two of them together in a way that allows them to soften their flaws without completely losing who they are, right? Like, at the end of the story, she's not as easy-go-lucky as he is. But he's also not as careless as he was in the beginning, right? And so, like, I love Enchanted, the movie Enchanted, where Robert and Giselle, they're like extreme opposites in the beginning. But by the end, they've like learned to balance each other out, right? Like, the ball in the end when Giselle wears that very modern dress is this beautiful reflection of her and modernity and like maturity and adulthood. But she still maintains the whimsy. And like, he starts to like feel and accept that whimsy as well, right? And so I wanted that with this dynamic and this character, because she is so stubborn, so strict, and so like tunnel visioned. I really needed her to be with someone who was like the total opposite so that they could bleed into each other. And so interactions that they needed to have. I mean, first of all, growing up, I really didn't love reading young adult like books where, you know, people's lives are at stake and they're still finding time to make out. You know, I'm like, what is happening when I'm stressed like this? That is the last thing I want to do. And so that's why I think I lean more towards the slow burn too, but also like what needs to happen for these two characters to trust each other. And I realized it's going through hard things together. Like in reality, that is what bonds me to certain people, is when we suffer together. And so that's why the poor prince, he gets the brunt of it, mostly with like the physical injury. He's already like half dead, so I'm like, it's fine. And then the main character, like they save each other a few times. They learn to rely on each other. They learn to struggle together. And so that was an important part of her development as well as his, and then just the relationship as a whole.
Where they're like in the middle of a battle and then they pause the battle and they're like, but wait, I need to tell you this very important thing about how I feel. Like,
yeah. It's like, do you want to die?
Yeah, exactly. We'll be a little bit late, but it'll be okay.
Yeah.
I love that phrase, bleed into each other too. That's such a great way of saying like how you get your characters to not sort of magically fix themselves, but just move, kind of the needle moves a little closer. They're influencing each other in those ways. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I just want to tell the audience as well, we just got a question. I was going to say, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. Oh yeah, this was interesting. Since we have some varying release dates in this panel, it kind of talks a little bit about something I was thinking about, which is since the books, are releasing into the world, or like soon to be released into this world, what do you hope or imagine readers will be talking about in book clubs, or like, what do you think that they'll be talking about after finishing your books?
I mean, I already have like a decent amount of data since I came out in January on what people mostly talk about. And my favorite is when they love the characters and when they find the characters relatable and are like, these people are my friends. Like, that's like exactly what I wanted with the found family element. That's like, I just want you to feel like you're entering a world that you would want to live in with people you'd want to hang out with. That was like my ultimate goal, and I feel like I succeeded. So that I'm always like, I just want to eat all that up. But when you say you look, like, I saw one review that was like, she was like, I had to DNF because she was too relatable. I was like, I totally understand, and I'm fine with that.
That's a good reason to DNF.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the best probably reason, that like this character is too much me, so I can't actually.
Yeah.
Well, my book's coming out in like 4.5. So go ahead, Cecilia. Go, sorry.
Oh no, you can go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, so it's hard to know because it's like on this side, but I guess I would hope that I maybe similarly to Carolyn, I hope people really fall for the two characters and their dynamic, and especially their banter. I really love their kind of quick-witted conversations in the book, and so I hope that's one of the, besides the kind of emotional core of the book that we talked about, I hope the sort of fun, playful banter between the two characters is something that people enjoy and take away from the story.
Mine is a little sadistic. And like the moment I finished this book, my biggest hope was like, I could get people to cry reading it. Because there was this particular scene every time, like the first time I wrote it, and then every time I revised it, I would tear up because it was just so personal to me. And so I hoped like my readers would feel something when they read it, that they would feel the grief and feel like the empathy. And I'm lucky in that, my book has been out for a few weeks now, but I actually met a member of my publishing team, and she was like, like in person, and this was the first time I ever met her, and she like got really emotional talking to me. She was like, I just read this book and it reminded me a lot of my own relationship with my father, who passed away a few years ago, and like the grief, but also the anger that the character experiences, it just really hit me. And she started tearing up and I started tearing up, and I was like, this is exactly what I wanted out of this book. Obviously I want people to be entertained. I want them to like it, the characters and the story and stuff. But I was like, if I can get them to cry, then I have really succeeded in doing something. Because I love books that made me cry when I was young. I loved, and maybe this is the masochist in me, but I love like crumpling on the floor after reading a book and just sobbing. I'm like, oh my gosh, that really ripped me apart. And so I wanted to write a book like that.
Yeah, I can definitely confirm. I think that is one of the, I went into Deathly Fates expecting like the adventure and the whatever, but I think that the emotional gut punches of like her relationship with her dad and also with the sister was like relatable. And I think that really like emotionally kind of grounds you to this really deeply complicated feeling, which I think is really compelling. We have another question, which I think is also interesting, considering that all of the books are YA, obviously. So how are you talking about your books differently to readers, like YA readers versus adults? Because, a lot of times we're having maybe adults buying books, or like there's certainly different ways that we talk to, these two different audiences. So how are you talking or maybe thinking about your books differently when addressing YA readers versus adults?
I haven't had like a lot of opportunity to directly speak with like teens. I did get to a little bit when I went on tour, but I think that the thing that stands out is like just like kind of like, is this appropriate for the age of your child? When I'm talking to a parent, like when I'm talking to adults, I'm like, if they're specifically, because I've had a lot of people who are like shopping for a child or a niece or what, and I'm just like, how old are they? There's a lot of cursing. Are you okay with that kind of a thing? So that's, I don't think I would talk too differently, because they're both prospective readers. Lots of adults, right, still read YA. So I'm not sure if I would, how differently I would address it other than that.
I work with teens all the time. I don't know that I pitch things that differently, to be quite honest. I think that the conversation is the conversation. I have a lot of faith in teenagers to sort of rise to the moment and be able to have the deep, hard conversations about things. So I don't know that I would alter the way I talk about it so much. I think that people get excited about tropes, like, ooh, it's like forced proximity, and like they get excited about the tropes are kind of a fun, enemies to lovers. Like I might drop some of those, because I think especially teen readers really get excited about those. But ultimately, I think the conversation is pretty much the same with young people.
Yeah. I also haven't had the opportunity to interact with a lot of young adults yet. I was at Y'all West last week, and I got to meet some teen readers. And I think for the most part, like Gwyneth said, I talk about my book the same way I talk to adults. Also because most of the adult readers I talk to are like bookstagrammers, and so they're readers too. They love books, and they love talking about it quite similarly to young adults or teenagers. So I just treat them the same. If they do ask me a question, I've gotten like a few like emails or just questions from readers where they're like, is this clean? Like, is this appropriate? And I'll tell them like, well, here are the things that it has. It has like violence and whatever. But if you're okay with that, then sure. But for the most part, I don't really necessarily worry too much about that. I trust my readers to do their own research, and I feel like too, like, I don't know, the cover is makes it kind of obvious that it's not like the most traumatizing book.
I will say I've gotten a few comments about how they sound like real teenagers. And
Mm.
that's like the ultimate compliment if you're writing in this space, that like that's your hope, that they sound like, like they're 18. And that their, way that they process the world and the mistakes that they make. They don't have all the answers and they don't always get it all right, in the way that none of us would at those ages, right? But that they hopefully seem believable, as coming at this at that moment in your life, coming at the story at that moment.
Yeah, and adult readers are going to react differently to that reading experience than a teen. Like you're going to get, all kinds of comments about, like I had a friend's mom read my book recently and she was like, I loved it, but the characters cried too much. And I was like, well, they're going through a lot. Okay. So you'll get like the random comments like that, but it's all good fun.
Yeah. I've had people say like, the characters read so young, like teenagers. And I'm like,
Oh,
this
no.
is good. It's dumb. I don't know why you're upset.
Yeah, I guess that's the interesting thing, is that when you're writing a YA book, you are thinking about like where it lands, the story lands in that, how like you kind of pitch it for that space. But when you talk about the book, weirdly, I think I have the same conversations with teens and adults. So talking about it like in the abstract, talking about it is different than like being inside the world and like what are the, the kind of firsts that your characters are going through. In a YA story, often it's like your characters are going through things for the first time, whereas it like different than an adult book. And so how do you kind of, you as the author, connect to that part of your own life, which I've very deeply connected those years in my own life. And so just sort of bringing the experience of like going through the world in those years.
Yeah, I recently was at a book event and someone asked me about a book, and then they mentioned that they were a parent and they really wanted to know like every single thing that happens in the book. And I think that was my first experience ever where I talked to a parent trying to buy a YA book. And that was a very different experience, I feel like, than talking to even just like another reader, right? Because it was very clear. I don't know if the parent was going to read the book first, but very different, like what you say and what people are interested in knowing beforehand. I want to ask a question about if your book could have a guest star from another book in the world, in the story, what character / what book would you pick? Caroline, do you want to start?
Yeah, my true filtered first thought was PETA from the Hunger Games. I don't know why. I just like feel like I feel like he would fit well in my cast because he's like kind of a soft boy and he likes art, and like there's a lot of like magical powers that are connected to people's like artistic abilities or like other kind of abilities in my world. So I just like feel like he'd make a nice addition to the cast.
I can't imagine him like walking off the ship straight into the cafe and
yeah, he deserves a happier book.
I'm blanking, so Gwyneth, you go first.
I know it's a tricky question. I think so characters do go through they sort of pivots once they learn like that they were killed, into sort of ghost detective mode, where they have to kind of crack this case. And so I guess if I was going to pull in another character, I'd want somebody who has some like strong teen detective abilities. Maybe, I don't know if you've read the Truly Devious series, but I'm thinking like Stevie Bell, who's and Maureen Johnson's books, is a pretty like on the ball sort of detective in those books. So I would probably pull somebody in, although she'd be kind of weirdly third wheeling it with Reed and Tessa, but I do think she could help them, sort of sift through the information in front of them and figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah. I feel like I had an answer to this, but I can't remember right now. Because I think if I could add another character into this book, it would probably be another jokester, because I just think that would be really funny for my main character to have to deal with. But yeah, my world is just so specific. I like when I think of a random character, I'm like, doesn't really fit in. Like I can't just say, let's throw, Edward Cullen in there for kicks and giggles or whatever. I don't know. I really don't. But I think in terms of personality, it would be someone more lighthearted.
Yeah, because I was thinking about, like your book and also this question. I was thinking, oh, would it be like a serious one? But you're right. I think there needs to be more, if anything, like more of a pulling personality kind of thing, like a joking, another, avenue for that kind of vibe, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. My last rapid fire question is, what dessert or drink would you want to pair with your book? So either something, you can pick something that either was from the book, or you could pick like, what would you want someone to either eat or drink while they were reading the book? I guess either one of those.
I mean, my book's so easy for this question because it takes place in a cafe. My like ideal drink is the lavender oat milk latte. That's like my favorite coffee drink. And because Danny has purple hair, I feel like the lavender goes well. But really any coffee drink or any kind of like scone or anything like that. There's a lot of different drinks that I like sprinkle throughout the book. And one of them was one that like I used to make for myself. I call it the snow cap. And it was like a London fog, but with mint instead of vanilla. And I really liked it. So you could try that.
It's a really tricky question. My characters do drink at this party, this like blowout rager that happens in this abandoned mansion. But then like ghosts don't eat or drink. So that was one of the things I had to figure out early on. I'm like, they don't sleep, they don't eat, and I can't make them smell things because it just feels like too of this world. Like there were times where I was like, should she smell that? No, she can't. But I don't know, maybe I would say like a white chocolate, like a ghostly little white chocolate.
Ghostly little chocolate.
Kind of ghostly in color.
My publisher actually collaborated with a tea company, and so they came up with this like ginseng peach tea blend. But I would personally, the drink that comes to mind when I'm thinking of like what reflects this book is mugicha. It's like this really rich, dark barley tea that my husband really loves. It's kind of bitter, but it also has and it's got this like beautiful dark color. And I think that kind of reflects the vibes of the book and the character.
Immediately going to, after this panel, to Google the tea that you mentioned. I think that's so fun to collaborate on a book tea, like a bookish inspired tea.
Yeah, can we get somewhere, Tessia? Is it?
I don't know. I haven't had it.
Link.
I haven't gotten it. It was sent out to influencers.
Well, I want to thank everyone for watching. Thank you for the questions. Also, I've left everyone's bookshop.org link for the books, obviously in the panel, in the description box below. So make sure to pick them up and also pre-order all of the books as well after this panel. Thank you as well to all of the authors for joining us today. And yeah, I hope everyone has a really great rest of your day and reading for the rest of 2026.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.